Hello, and welcome to another episode of Shooting Straight, Living Life in Truth. I am your host, Charles. And today we're going to be talking about a slightly edgy topic again, in reference to firearms, gun control laws, etc., the Second Amendment. So, some of you might actually get triggered, so I would suggest that you
proceed with caution.
Now, some of you won't. Some of you will agree with me wholeheartedly. Others will only agree with me partially. Others will completely disagree with me and disagree with me partially. I'm giving you my perspective on this, from my experience, my knowledge, my research, my years of being around firearms and my experience with them, which consists basically of almost 2 decades in the military. Also, my first experience with firing a firearm was a 12-gauge shotgun when I was roughly 8-9 years old. Yeah, it knocked me on my butt. But then I also have other experiences with with firearms as well. When I was 9 years old, my mother got married for the second time. He was the first person I ever had as a male figure that was in my life that basically fulfilled the role of a father figure. But as it turned out, he was very abusive. So much so, in fact, that to some extent, I firmly believe that he would have been diagnosed as a psychopath or a sociopath. Because he did all kinds of sick, twisted things to us. One of those things was right before I turned 10 years old. We had this routine, this weekly schedule kind of thing where we cleaned house on Saturdays. And when I say clean house, I'm talking like almost like a spring cleaning kind of cleaning house, and that was on a weekly basis. And he would literally go around with like a white glove, checking everything, seeing if he came up with any dust on his finger. And you know, if he did, even if it was just something as simple as like got a little bit of dust off of the toilet paper dispenser, I would have a belt put to my butt for about 5, 10, 15 minutes. Well, it seemed that long. Probably wasn't, but it seemed that long when I was that young. And then when that was over with, I would have to go around and do everything all over again. Yep, that's right. Do the whole house because he found one little bit of dust on the toilet paper dispenser. But this one particular day, I'd gone through it, cleaned the house, got everything right. He didn't find any dust. So, and the general rule was I couldn't watch cartoons, I couldn't go out and play, I couldn't do anything until the house was clean. So this particular day, I managed to get it clean the first time to his satisfaction. But he decided that he wanted to watch a movie with me before I was allowed to go out and play or do anything else. So he went into his room and he got his pistol, which, memory serves, was either a 38 or a 380 revolver. And he came back out, set it on the coffee table, started cleaning it, put the movie on, which happened to be Clint Eastwood's The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. And I was watching the film the whole time he's cleaning his pistol and stuff, and I can see it out the corner of my eye, him doing various things with it or whatnot. And at one point I had started getting into the movie, and all of a sudden I felt this pressure on the side of my head. Whatever it was cold, was hard, felt like metal. That's when I realized that that his pistol wasn't on the table. And he had the pistol to my head. And he followed that with a statement of, do you know or understand how easy it would be for me to paint the walls with your brains right now? The world would be better off without you. No one would miss you because no one loves you, not even your mom. And then he pulled the trigger and it went click. That's a sound I will never forget my entire life. So then I saw him push the cylinder out, say that I was a lucky individual, and then turn the firearm pointed straight up in the air, and a round fell out of the cylinder. A man had played Russian roulette with me. I can't describe to you that day the kind of fear that I felt. It's a fear that literally petrified me. I couldn't move, I couldn't talk, but the only thing I did, I think, was blink, and that was just because it was an involuntary thing that your body does. But otherwise, I couldn't move, I couldn't speak, I couldn't think. I'd never felt so much fear in my life, and to this day I still haven't felt that kind of fear again. And largely that's because that I promised myself I never would. And other experiences that I've had have, helped me get to a point where my fear factor and my fear level is really low. Or actually high, depending on how you look at it. My ability to experience fear is dramatically reduced. I'm not saying that to brag, I'm just telling you the reality of things and what my experience with firearms has been. Now, one of those too, also, in addition to having fired the shotgun when I was knee-high to a grasshopper, and that experience with my stepfather from the second marriage, later on when I was a teenager, my mom had married again after divorcing the last guy. So now she was on her third marriage. This was my second stepfather, so to speak. And he had a .22 rifle, which he had loaded with birdshot or shot, however you want to describe that. But to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, this is the kind of ammunition that he had loaded his .22 rifle with. So you can see all the little tiny BBs and stuff inside that clear blue plastic. Pardon me. That's what's known as shot or shot shell, or bird shot. The interesting thing about it is I was just a teenager and I used it a couple of times, just goofing around out in the yard and shooting a stop sign at the end of the street. Yeah, I was young, I was stupid. It was the dumbest thing I could have done with any kind of firearm. But I didn't have anybody that taught me proper respect for firearms or safety with firearms at that point. And it was just me being interested and basically playing around. And as you can see from the way the ammunition looks, it reminded me of basically a BB gun. And that's kind of how I thought about it. But thing is you can see right here, muzzle velocity on that is 1,000 feet per second. 1,000 feet per second with those little tiny BBs right here coming after you at 1,000 feet per second. That could hurt somebody. And that could hurt somebody pretty bad. The other thing that you'll notice on here is this little warning right there. It says, do not use shot shells in firearms with ported barrels or ported recoil compensators. It's intended for short-range pest control, not recommended for self-defense. Yeah. So there's all kinds of different firearms, all kinds of different ammunition that can be used in firearms. Each one of them has their own characteristics. Each one of them is capable of doing its own particular type and kind of damage. Your standard ball ammo, that's going to be the kind of thing that basically shoots straight through you, creates a small hole about the size of the bullet, a little bit larger, and is known for shattering bones and whatnot, and penetration. Your hollow points and whatnot are designed so that when they hit a solid object of some kind, or an object with some substance to it, they're meant to flower out, as it's referred to. Pardon me. Increasing its diameter, and it basically slices or cuts or shreds as it goes. Bones have a tendency to stop them cold. So each kind of ammunition does its own sort of thing. But that's not really what I'm trying to talk about. I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole there. I apologize for that. But my knowledge is extensive. I'm no expert by any stretch of the imagination. I'm not trying to portray that. I'm not trying to say that I am. I'm just giving you some basic information today to explain why I think the way I do when it comes to firearms and the Second Amendment and gun control. So, and the reasons for it. So, without further ado, let's get into this a little bit more. Now, in order for some of the things that I'm going to be saying later to make any sense to you, because I'm going to be going over some statistics and showing some things from the F.B.I. website and from the National Institute of Justice, and some other things. And you're going to need to understand how the F.B.I. actually defines certain things in order for that information to make any sense to you. So with that, the first definition that I really want to go over with you is the one for an active shooter. The active shooter is an individual who is actively engaged in killing or attempting to kill people in a confined and populated area. Another definition that I want to give you that comes from the F.B.I. is way down here. Let me scroll down here for you. It's called personal weapons. Now, personal weapons may not be what you think it is based on the F.B.I.'s definition. And this is it. A person's hands, arms, feet, fists, or teeth. I would personally take it even further and basically say to you that it's pretty much any part of your body that you can use as a weapon. That includes your knees, your feet, your fingers, your head, chin, elbows. It's essentially your body being used as a weapon. Just put it in simplistic terms so that you understand what that is. All right. Now that's going to come important later on when I start talking about the statistics from the F.B.I. and I start showing you those. So I need you to keep those two definitions in mind as to what those things are, because you will see them again. The other thing that I want to go over is this right here. Sentence structure. I know that seems pretty basic to you. And you may be wondering why I'm going over this. Well, it's going to become important a little bit later on too, when we start getting into some of the other documents that I'm going to show you later on. But here is an example of the use of a clarifying statement, or clarifying segment within a statement. All right. So this sentence, Jimmy likes to take cream and sugar with his coffee, but when he drinks it warm, he also likes it black. Could also be read as Jimmy likes to take cream and sugar with his coffee, but he also likes it black. Both are telling you the truth about Jimmy. Pardon me. I got a tickle in my throat today for some reason. Anyway, both statements are telling you the truth about Jimmy. Just one offers a segment within the sentence that clarifies when he actually likes it black. Right? That's that statement. It's enclosed in commas. But when he drinks it warm, in other words, warm coffee, he likes it black. When he drinks it warm is information that's not necessary to the sentence, but it adds additional clarifying meaning to another segment within the statement. So in this case, it's offering the clarification and additional information regarding when he actually likes it black. That becomes important a little bit later, and I'll show you why here in just a bit. Oh, sorry. Had the wrong screen up there. This is what I was talking about, guys. My bad. Pardon me. I'm trying to produce this all on my own. But that's the sentence that I was talking about there. You notice this clarifying segment right here, but when he drinks it warm, that's adding the additional information to he also likes it black. And it's enclosed in parentheses, in commas. So, my bad. Like I said, I'm trying to do this on my own. So, there may be a couple screw ups here and there. It's just how things go when you're trying to produce something like this and you're having to do it by yourself. Anyway, moving on. Go ahead and bring this screen back up. And one of the things that I want to go into, actually, you know what? Let's show you this one. That I want to get into is this whole push for gun control. This will become a little bit more important later on. But as I go through this next bit of information, you're going to start noticing the stuff like this is not exactly true. It's painted in specific ways to create a specific type of narrative. All right. And the only way you're ever really going to know the truth is if you dig into it and investigate it and study it for yourself, and get the raw data and think about it yourself critically. All right. So with this, all right, and a lot of this gun control stuff is being brought up and pushed largely because of mass shootings specifically related to schools. But mass shootings occur and they occur in other places other than schools. All right, they occur in a lot of places, like for example the one we just saw the other night in the nightclub. Right, we've seen them in nightclubs, we've seen them happen in hotels, we've seen them happen at concerts, we've seen them happen in movie theaters. So they happen everywhere, right? It's not just in one particular type, but because of the schools, this narrative gets pushed a lot. All right, well, let's start taking a look at some of the data and see if they're right. Here on this particular site, pardon me, Public Mass Shootings Database. It amasses details of half a century of U.S. mass shootings with firearms, generating psychosocial histories. Okay, I'm not going to read everything on here, but I would highly recommend you taking a look at this and looking at some of it, because there's some interesting information in here. Some of it I agree with, some of it I don't, but nevertheless it's interesting, and it's actually a fairly decent detailed look at the scenario. But what I want to get to is right here with the firearms. All right. Pardon me again. So notably, most individuals who engage in mass shootings used handguns 77.2% of the time, and 25.1% used assault rifles. I hate that term, and you'll understand why here in a little bit, because I'll get into that, in the commission of their crimes. Of the known mass shooting cases, 32.5% of cases could not be confirmed. 77% of those who engaged in mass shootings purchased at least some of their guns legally, while illegal purchases were made by 13% of those committing mass shootings. In cases involving K through 12 school shootings, over 80% of individuals who engaged in shootings stole guns from family members. Illegal possession. And this study goes on to say some other things as well. But now I want to get down to the nitty gritty. All right. This site is the F.B.I.'s Crime Data Explorer. One thing I want you to notice right now is what we have here is the rate of violent crime offenses by population. Now, in order to understand this, give me just a second. I'm going to pull myself back up here while I find this other website, because I had this all planned out in my head, the way I was going to talk about certain things and when and how, and I lined them up that way. But at this particular instance, I'm getting into something now that I think I need to show you first. Yep, here we go. Another explanation here, right? So what you're looking at here is how the per capita stats are figured out in the way that they do it. All right, so per capita, in order to come up with that number, you have to take the number of crimes in a community and divide that number by the population of the community. So in other words, Florida's got 23 million residents. Say there's 1,200 violent crimes that take place that year. All right. You would take the 1,200 violent crimes that were committed that year and divide it by the 23 million. That would give you a very small number. Well, then the second step in that process is to multiply the result by 100,000 in order to get the rate per 100,000. You do the same thing with rate per 1,000. It's a multiplier, basically, right? So in this example here, right, they're using 189 violent crimes out of a population of 21,402 people. All right, that gives you this number right here, which basically means that there was that many burglaries or whatever, burglaries, because that's what they're using here, per person in this community in 2012. Well, in order to get the rate per 100,000, you have to multiply that number by 100,000, which is what they're doing right here. which gives you 883.095, which means that there were 883.095 burglaries for every 100,000 people in Biddeford in 2012. That's not a place I would actually want to live. All right. So that's how they come up with calculating the rate per 100,000 people. That's something that I know a lot of people don't understand and kind of look at it and go, well, what do they mean by that? Blah, blah, blah. Well, that's how they do it. All right. So the FBI statistics and the Crime Data Explorer. What you see here is the rate of violent crime offenses by population. Okay. Now, this stops at 2020. 2020 was the year of the summer of love, right? Well, that would explain why that spike in crime went up there. All right. But if you notice, starting in 2016, crime started dropping. And it wasn't until all the racial stuff started happening that things started to plateau and then spiked up there in 2020. Now, this is where life and things start getting interesting. Okay? Most of the violent crimes are committed by people between the ages of 20 and 39. Young folks doing dumb things. Okay. All violent crime victim demographics. Okay. Now this is what really gets interesting here. So I'm going to expand these out for you. And I want you to see something. The crime occurring within a residence or a home. In other words, in your home, right? That's 418,000. 418,000. That is the most frequent location where violent crimes occur. In these instances of violent crime, the relationship to the victim is unknown in 250,000 of them. A stranger occurs 191,000 times. By an acquaintance, 118,000 times. Boyfriend or girlfriend, 91,000. Otherwise known, 68,000. Spouse, 26,000. Friend, 23,000. And the numbers just keep falling. Over here on the location types. Highways, alleys, streets, sidewalks. Second most frequent place, 174,000. Parking garages and lots, 56,000. Convenience stores, 22,000. Hotel or motel, 21,000. Unknown locations, 25,000. Department of discount store, 12,000. Bars and nightclubs, 10,000. Restaurant, 12,000. Park or playground, 9,000. Now, look at this. Schools and elementary, 5,900. Wait, down the list quite a bit of ways. One of the safer places to be in the world. An air terminal, bus terminal, train terminal, 3,000. Government or public building, 2,000. Liquor stores, 1,700. Shopping mall, 1,600. School or college, 1,300. Church or synagogue, temple, some type, 1,000. Homeless shelters, 954. Now, what makes these things interesting is what weapons are used for all of these violent crimes. Take a look at this. 178,900, basically 179,000 of the crimes were done with personal weapons. Remember that definition? Basically your body parts, whatever you can use as a weapon. Almost 180,000 times. Compared to handguns, there were 140,000. Almost a 40,000 difference. And remember, most mass shootings aren't committed with rifles. They're committed with handguns. And look at this. Not far behind. Knife and cutting instrument, 88,000 crimes that way. Firearm, in this instance, is referring to rifles, 67,000. There's more than double that amount of crimes being committed with pistols, not rifles. Blunt object, 51,000. Some of these others kind of weird, but asphyxiation, 14,000. And the list goes on and on and on. So as we can see, people have violent crimes committed against them with a variety of different weapons. All right, sex statistics. The victims or the perpetrators, primarily male. The victims, more male than female. But the victimization of females is much higher than the actual number of offenders being female. Race, another interesting statistic. 335,507 committed by Black or African American individuals. More than the 328,000 committed by whites. 74,000 by unknown. 11,000 by American Indian or Alaskan Native. And 6,000 committed by Asians. Victims. 459,000 victims are white. 312,000 are Black or African American. Kind of flies in the face of the narrative from the Summer of Love, doesn't it? These are actual F.B.I. statistics. These aren't statistics that I'm pulling out of thin air and making up. They're F.B.I. statistics. And here's some statistics from the F.B.I. related to serial killers. There's a 69-page report that spans 46 years period from 1960 to 2006 and uses information from 480 solved cases, case files of serial murder involving 92 offenders. Some 13% of all causes of death used the behavioral analysis were determined to have been gunshot wounds. 13%. Gunshot wounds accounted for 7.6% of the sexually motivated serial murders and 4.4% of the same-sex serial murders. Some 85% of all the victims were female, 32% prostitutes, 64% Black, and 28% white. About 56% of all offenders in the study were black. 33% were white. Interesting that the news media always shows serial killers as being a white person. Some crazy white guy, right? According to what we just saw, that's not necessarily the case. And there are a lot more black serial killers than we thought there were. I'm sure there's probably a lot more Hispanic ones too. See, the thing is these kind of crimes, they have nothing to do with skin color. They have everything to do with a person's heart condition, mental condition. Everything to do with it. It has nothing to do with race. Nothing to do with ethnicity. All right. Now, here's a website, Jocelyn Law Firm, who has dedicated most of what they do to violent crimes. All right. What you see here are weapons that are most commonly used for homicides. The F.B.I. collected data on the weapons used in 13,922 homicides across the United States during 2019. 10,258 of these homicides were committed using a firearm, and only 364 of those were committed using a rifle, which includes assault rifles. I'll tell you why I put that in air quotes here in a little bit. All right. So, back out of this so I can show you this whole diagram real quick. Now, if you look at this is a breakdown of the different weapons that are used. All right. 6,365 of them were committed using a handgun, not a rifle. More than 3,500 of these crimes were committed with hands, fists, personal weapons, or other weapons like blunt objects, poisons, explosives, fires, narcotics, etc., and knives or cutting instruments. Scroll down so you can see the rest of it. Firearms type unknown, 3,300. Shotguns, 200. Rifles, 364. 2.6% of all the violent crimes are committed with rifles. Rifles that the general public calls assault rifles. Now, I'm sorry, but any kind of violent crime is just wrong. I don't care what kind of weapon you use. But I want you to see and I want you to understand that firearms aren't the only weapons that are used to kill people. All right? Just, for example, up in Waukesha, or up in Wisconsin, right? Darrell Brooks used the car. Killed and injured over 60 people. 60 counts of recklessly endangering safety. 60 counts. Used a car. A car. Here we go. 4 Idaho students killed in their apartment. A knife or some sort of cutting object. Lone Star College. Mass knife attacks. 14 people. 9 hurt in Minnesota Mall, knife attack. Suspect killed. And then there's this whole argument about good guys with guns stop bad guys with guns. One side says it's true, the other side says it's not true. Blah, 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 blah. Well, here are the facts. Okay. According to statistics provided by the Advanced Law Enforcement Rapid Response Training Group out of Texas State University in San Marcos, Texas, there were 464 active shooter situations between 2000 and 2021. They say that in only 24 of those situations was an attack ended by an armed civilian eliminating the threat with their own firearm. Mainstream media and gun grabber activist groups latch on to the single figure to say that a good guy with a gun stopping a bad guy with a gun is rare. In fact, over the past 22 years, they have only stopped 5% of all mass casualty shootings. They are technically correct, but they are only telling half the story. Here's where Alert's information reveals a lot that the mainstream media will never share, and it simply just doesn't fit the narrative. Let's repeat. 266 of 464 active shooter events between 2000 and 2021 ended before police arrived to engage. That equates to 57% of the time. The events end before the police show up. Of that percentage, 193 endings are coordinated by the attackers themselves. In other words, they either leave the scene or they self-eliminate. That leaves 73 instances where active shooters were stopped by civilians. So let's focus on that math for just a second. That means that civilian interaction accounted for 16% of stoppages. Of the 266 occurrences of an active shooter ending before police were present, 156 ended either by civilian intervention or suicide. That is 55% of the time. All of that is what has happened before the police get there. Here are 371 instances in which a good guy stopped a bad guy with a firearm, or stopped them in some form or fashion. This latest episode out in Colorado, pardon me, was stopped by someone who was in the club, not by police. Another example. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Okay. Marjorie Stoneman Douglas. That could have been prevented. Sheriff Israel and his deputies could have arrested that individual long before that shooting ever took place on a class 4 felony in the state of Florida. That very next week, there was someone apprehended in my county walking toward a school with a rifle and a pistol. They were seen by one of the neighbors of the school and notified police, and they were arrested. The very next week, in Clay County, a young lady made a threat on social media that she was going to shoot up a school. Deputies arrive at her house, see that she has access and the means to carry out the threat. Class 4 felony, she was arrested. Uvalde. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail on that. But if you really want to know the details of what happened there and how that could have been prevented and how that could have been avoided, check out Mike Glover. He has a video that goes into a great amount of detail on what happened there and how that happened, why it wasn't stopped. But it could have been stopped before the first student was shot. That's right. A lot of this stuff can be stopped if we enforce our laws that are currently on the books. And you'll understand what I mean by that here in a little bit. Now, the 1994 crime bill, which everybody likes to tout. Everybody likes to say it was effective. While the other side said it wasn't effective at all and didn't do anything to do blah, blah, blah. All right. In reality, the final report concluded the ban's success in reducing crimes committed with banned guns was mixed. Gun crimes involving assault weapons declined. However, the decline was offset throughout at least the late 1990s by steady or rising use of other guns equipped with large capacity magazines. And that's information that gets used by the left for a number of reasons to accomplish certain things and to push a particular narrative. But I'm about to get into some stuff now that can counteract that. But for right now, I'm going to take a short break. So give me a minute. I'm going to get me something else to drink, and I'll continue this taping here. All right. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that interruption. Needed to get a refill on my drink, take a nature break, and check on my dogs. But anyway, with all of those statistics that I just showed you, like I said, the left likes to use them to promote their gun control stuff. The right will use the same statistics to promote the Second Amendment. The thing about statistics is you can make them say anything you want. But when you look at the raw data, things change. Things take on a different perspective. Like, for example, when this incident, this situation that took place in Colorado recently, right? Mainstream media jumped all over it and almost immediately started trying to blame it on some white Christian because it fit their narrative. It's the narrative of what they need for gun control. But the reality is, they don't have all the information. Nobody does right now except for the police. The police are the only ones that have all the information on the situation anyway. Anything anybody says concerning any of these situations before we have all the information is pure speculation. 2020 hindsight, right? Once we have all the information, we'll know better what's going on. Another example, right? The Walmart scenario in Virginia. I was just on Twitter earlier and saw somebody make the comment about your right to own a firearm doesn't supersede my right to go to Walmart and not have to be worried about being shot. Okay, well, I already showed you the statistics. Your likelihood of being shot or attacked in a Walmart is exponentially lower than it is being attacked or shot in your own home. Being attacked or shot in the school is exponentially lower than you being attacked or shot while driving down the highway, walking down the street, or being in an alley. Or being at home. The unsafest place you can be nowadays is your own home. As a matter of fact, just in my neighborhood a couple of weeks ago, the police were notified and caught an individual walking through our neighborhood checking doors. The reality of the fact is you have to be ready. You have to be prepared. And you have to be on guard no matter where you're at, no matter what you're doing. Now, I'm not talking about being afraid or being fearful. Because that sort of thing isn't going to do anything but get you in trouble. Just like when I was 9 years old, almost 10, and my stepfather held that firearm to my head. I was petrified in fear. There wasn't anything I was going to be able to do about it. Now, if somebody were to do that, I'm a little more prepared and I know what to do, and I could probably save my own life. Yeah, this topic is a personal one. You know, I'm giving you facts, but at the same time, you also know that there's a personal side to it. And I'm just tired of all the fuss and fighting and arguing going on between both sides of the political environment about this topic. Because until we can stop jumping to conclusions and getting everybody worked up in a frenzy and yelling and screaming about this or that or whatever, the only way we're going to be able to solve this is if we can come together and have a meaningful dialogue about the situation and figure out how to solve it. And the only way that's going to happen is for us to sit down and look at the data and figure out what happened and how to fix it. Because I've already showed you where several, and I'm even going to go so far as to go out on a limb here and say that the majority of mass shootings could have been stopped before they happen. Had the laws been enforced, police done their job, and someone had a high enough value on life to intervene before the police arrive, because as we've already seen, the majority of mass shootings end before the police even show up. So if they end before they even show up, what are they going to do about it? They're going to collect data, they're going to collect information, they're going to collect evidence, possibly and hopefully prosecute someone, put someone in jail for it. Shooting. Hey, stop. Sorry about that. Dog is over there scratching on the other chair in my office. Anyway, that's what they're going to do. Because most of the stuff ends before they show up. It'd end even sooner if the American public was doing their duty. Yeah, I said it.
How dare you!
You'll understand why I made that comment here in a little bit. So let's continue real quick. Now, one of the arguments that people like to say is talking about, well, the Second Amendment doesn't apply to modern day weapons because they didn't have these kind of weapons back in the day. Okay. No, they didn't have semi-automatic rifles back then. But let's take a closer look at that, and let's see what they did have, and let's see what they didn't have. All right? Right here. Equipment of the Continental Army. Goes in and talks about what they had, but look at this right here. Look at this right here. All right? Continental Army often used the local militia to help out. The militia, made up of male citizens over the age of 16 years, was the defense force for each of the states. The regiments of militia were called up for service by the governor or the commanding general to serve for a campaign or for a period of time as needed. The soldiers were told what equipment they had to bring with them. Continental Army wasn't providing them with weapons, wasn't providing them with equipment. They had to provide it themselves. A militia rifleman carried a rifle, knife, tomahawk, and a light axe, water bottle, a powder horn for his black powder, and a hunting pouch that held other shooting supplies. Sometimes a patch knife, used to cut the patch of cloth, and a loading block, which held patched bullets, enabling the rifleman to load quicker, were attached to the strap of the hunting pouch. In addition, a charger measured the amount of powder to put into the rifle when loading. Another one. Okay. Mobilizing a standing and well-funded army is challenging, even in the highly industrialized world we live in today. So you can imagine how hard it would have been when it had to be thrown together quickly in a land with minimal large-scale production capacity for durable goods. But still, a Continental Army soldier required the basics just to survive. Here's what they were equipped with: a musket or a long rifle, most of which were of European origin, and many were commandeered on the battlefield, pilfered from British stocks, or came from private sources. Colonial gunsmiths were ordered to make as many flintlocks as possible once the war began, and France provided many arms as the war progressed as well. Cartridge box made of tin or leather, socket bayonet, a haversack made of cloth with food rations and utensils, wooden canteen to carry water, a knapsack for blanket and clothes and razor, comb, all that kind of stuff, a knife, pistols and swords, as well as other edged weapons. Now, this is what your militia carried. And if you notice right here, as for militiamen's firearms, they were what you had or could borrow, and some were very old. Hatchets often took the place of knives. It was truly a homegrown affair and made for a tough life on the battlefield. So essentially what we're seeing here is that our militiamen, these folks who, these folks who fought the Revolutionary War, used their own weapons, used their own rifles that they owned or borrowed from someone. Because the military, the militia, the Continental Army wasn't issuing them. Weren't big enough for that yet. They even had rogue soldiers that were on the battlefield that were just private citizens who took to the battlefield to help the military in the fight against England. One such incident was George Washington going to attack one of the English troops, ran across some of these rogue soldiers and found out that they had already attacked the English that he was headed to attack. And he thought about canceling the attack, but he continued. And he ended up being successful in that battle because the English weren't expecting him to attack, because they thought the rogue soldiers that had attacked him already had been Washington's soldiers, but they weren't. So the English relaxed. And when George Washington attacked, he won. The private citizen owned the same firearms the military did at the time that the Constitution was drafted. Same exact weapons. No difference. Now, in order to understand the Constitution, you have to have context for it. The Declaration of Independence is what essentially initiated the Revolutionary War, although there were contributing factors that led up to George Washington and the Founding Fathers writing and signing and declaring their independence from England. Were a ton of other incidences that most of you are familiar with already. I'm not going to get into that. But you had things like the Boston Tea Party. You had things like the Boston Massacre. You had a lot of things that happened that led up to it. High taxation without representation. You had people being jailed on just mere accusations of a crime. You had people being jailed for being dissenters. You had people being shipped back to England and tried on false accusations and convicted and put to death because of it. You had soldiers living in people's houses, eating up their food and doing all kinds of stuff. There was a lot of stuff. I mean, if you go through this Declaration of Independence right here, look at this. There's over 20 different things that were cited as to and for the reason for them declaring their independence and the reason for them going to war against England. And if we read some of these things, there's several of them that are happening right now in our country under Joe Biden. Examples of that would be Joe Biden ignoring the Supreme Court rulings and doing his own thing anyway and ruling by executive order. The dual justice system that we have going on in the United States right now. These open borders. The heavy taxation. All of this stuff is stuff that the Founding Fathers were declaring their independence from England over. Granted, they happen in different ways, with the same principles and the same concepts and in the same similar actions were taking place back then, which led to them declaring their independence. And one of the key fundamental statements that are made in the Declaration of Independence that everybody knows, Joe Biden tried to quote and couldn't do it. Oh, you know the thing. You know the thing, right? Right here. Right here. Let me get this up for you. There we go. Let me zoom in on it for you. There we go. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator, not the government, by their Creator, with certain unalienable rights, that among these, not listing all of them, but among them are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That to secure these rights, hear that? Clarifying statement telling you what the next thing is in conjunction with what the next thing is. That to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. For what purpose? To secure those rights. Not to give them to you, but to secure them. Safeguard them. Protect them. Deriving their just powers from the consent of the governed. Notice our government can't do anything that we don't consent to. That was the Founding Fathers' principles. That was one of the reasons why they declared their independence from the United Kingdom, from England, and the King of England, was because they wanted to protect their rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, along with other unalienable rights endowed by their Creator, which weren't listed here. Now, let's go to the Constitution, and you'll see where that's further backed up in the preamble of the Constitution. We, the people of the United States, in order for the purpose of forming a more perfect union, in other words, the federal government, establish justice. In other words, this is what we consider to be justice, law and order. Ensure domestic tranquility. Now, there's these laws and these things that we're putting into effect right now are to maintain peace among the people. Provide for the common defense, the U.S. military. Promote the general welfare. That's pretty self-explanatory. The general welfare meaning financial welfare, physical welfare, mental welfare, etc., 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 etc. In today's government, is chief contributor to the mental illness that exists in this country.
How dare you?
Yeah, I know. I said it. And to secure the blessings of liberty to ourselves and our posterity. In other words, all of these things were to be established under the Constitution for the purpose of securing the blessings of liberty and our rights to ourselves and our posterity. What is our posterity? Our children, our future generations. Do ordain and establish this Constitution for the United States of America. So this states the purpose of why the Constitution exists. To protect the Creator-endowed and unalienable rights to life, liberty, the pursuit of happiness, and other rights that weren't listed there, which were later included in the Bill of Rights. Speaking of the Bill of Rights, First Amendment, it's freedom of speech. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion. Literally what that's referring to in that particular instance and the way that it was used, it is saying that they will make no law regarding an establishment of religion. In other words, they're not going to tell them what they can and cannot do. They're not going to interfere with a religion or people's right to religion. Or prohibiting the free exercise thereof. They're not going to make any laws concerning the church, concerning religion. But not so long ago during COVID, they were making laws and putting out executive orders and dictating and mandating things at the local level that prevented churches from practicing their religion. Or abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble, and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. We live in a country where we're free to say what we want to say without being or living in fear of being imprisoned, put into a concentration camp, put into a gulag, or put into a re-education center. And that right right there is creator endowed. We have a right to speak against our government. We have a right to practice our religion without interference. And it doesn't matter what religion it is. I don't care if you're atheist, agnostic, Hindu, Jewish, Islam, Muslim, Taoist. I don't care. This gives you the right to practice anything you want in the way of religion, minus the obvious things like murder. No, that's not going to happen because you have a creator endowed right to life. That's why murder is illegal. So if your religion includes killing people, that's one part of your religion you're not going to be able to do. Sorry. Other than that, you're free to exercise and you're free to practice it any way you choose. That's your right. Go for it. But that does not, I repeat, that does not say that there is a separation of church and state. It just means that the government is not going to make any laws concerning the establishment of religion or the free practice thereof. It also does not say that a person's religion won't influence government. Because when you get right down to the nitty gritty and you actually study it and look at it and truly look at it in objective passion, many of the principles that this country is founded on, that the founding fathers put into place, come straight out of the Bible, come straight out of the Christian religion. Freedom of speech being one of them. The right to life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, and all men being created equal. All of that comes straight out of the Bible. Don't like it? Sorry. Triggered? Sorry. Truth is the truth. Deal with it. Second Amendment. It's where things get interesting, and we have one of those clarifying segments in here. A well-regulated militia, comma, being necessary to the security of a free state, comma. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Let's read it without the clarifying statement. A well-regulated militia, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Now, I just showed you where the people were the suppliers of the firearms for the Revolutionary War. The Founding Fathers had the intent for the people to be able to protect themselves, which is why they had firearms to begin with. The militias were created to help protect the entire state and used the private weapons of private citizens. They did spend money, however, on things like cannons and bigger weapons to be able to fight forces like the English army, who had cannons too. But the private individual citizen had their own firearms. They had their own firearms to protect against thieves, to protect against Indians, and to protect against the tyrannical government. And we also read it another way. A well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, shall not be infringed. Modern day militia is the National Guard. That's what they are. The private citizen, however, Still falls in here, right here. Right here. Right of the people to bear arms. To keep the right of the people. Not the militia. The people to keep and bear arms. Shall not be infringed. In other words, the right of a state to have a militia and the right of the people to keep and bear arms, neither of those rights would be infringed upon. Because the premise was that it was for protection purposes. Now, take that a step further, add a little more context, and well, that's just your personal interpretation of what it's saying. No. Again, context. Take a look at what the Founding Fathers said. Here's one from George Washington. When government takes away citizens' right to bear arms, it becomes citizens' duty to take away government's right to govern. Another one. When any nation mistrusts its citizens with guns, it is sending a clear message. It no longer trusts its citizens because such a government has evil plans. Here's another one. However, political parties may now and then answer popular ends, they are likely, in the course of time and things, to become potent engines by which cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men will be enabled to subvert the power of the people. What do you think we've been seeing going on now for the last 50 years? The government has been doing that very thing. Here's some more. George Washington. A free people ought not only to be armed, but disciplined. And that the said Constitution be never construed to authorize Congress to infringe the just liberty of the press, or the rights of conscience, or to prevent the people of the United States, who are peaceable citizens, from keeping their own arms, or to raise standing armies, unless necessary for the defense of the United States, or of some one or more of them, or to prevent the people from petitioning in a peaceable and orderly manner the federal legislature for a redress of grievances, or to subject the people to unreasonable searches and seizures of their persons, papers, or possessions. That no man should scruple or hesitate a moment to use arms in defense of so valuable a blessing, on which all good and evil of life depends, is clearly my opinion. It may be laid down as a primary position and the basis of our system that every citizen who enjoys the protection of a free government owes not only a proportion of his property, but even of his personal services to the defense of it. And consequently, the citizens of America, with a few legal and official exceptions, from 18 to 50 years of age, should be born on the militia rolls, provided with uniform arms, and so far accustomed to the use of them, that the total strength of the country might be called forth at short notice on any very interesting emergency. John Adams. A free people ought not only to be armed, but disciplined, to which end a uniform and well-digested plan is requisite, and their safety and interest require that they should promote such manufactories as tend to render them independent on others for essential, particularly for military supplies. Thomas Jefferson. No free man shall ever be debarred the use of arms. I prefer dangerous freedom over peaceful slavery. What country can preserve its liberties if their rulers are not warned from time to time that their people preserve the spirit of resistance? Let them take arms. The laws that forbid the carrying of arms are laws of such a nature. They disarm only those who are neither inclined nor determined to commit crimes. Such laws make things worse for the assaulted and better for the assailants. They serve rather to encourage than to prevent homicides, for an unarmed man may be attacked with greater confidence than an armed man. And they go on, and they go on. Benjamin Franklin. They can give up essential liberty. They that can give up essential liberty to obtain a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety. Democracy is two wolves and a lamb voting on what to have for lunch. Liberty is a well-armed lamb contesting the vote. And they go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. The Second Amendment was written to ensure that our right to keep and bear arms would not be infringed. As part of those God-given rights that we were talking about, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, liberty is one of those. And liberty has to be protected. And the best way to protect it is with firearms. And a willingness and an ability to fight when the fight is necessary. Here's some quotes from the Federalist Papers. I know a lot of people like to quote and like to use. The Constitution shall never be construed to prevent the people of the United States who are peaceable citizens from keeping their own arms. Arms like laws discourage and keep the invader and the plunderer in awe. Preserve order in the world as well as property. The same balance would be preserved were all the world destitute of arms. For all would be alike, but since some will not, others dare not lay them aside. Horrid mischief would ensue were one half the world deprived of the use of them. To preserve liberty, it is essential that the whole body of people always possess arms and be taught alike, especially when young, how to use them. The supreme power in America cannot enforce unjust laws by the sword, because the whole body of the people are armed and constitute a force superior to any band of regular troops that can be, on any pretense, raised in the United States. And they go on and on and on and on. So it's quite clear at this point that our founding fathers intended that the individual person had the right to keep and bear arms, and that it wasn't just the militia. In fact, the Second Amendment applies to a state's right to have a militia and to the individual person to keep and bear arms. That's what the Second Amendment is. That's what it does. And it exists to prevent the government from taking that away from us. Yet the government exists to protect those rights. The government didn't give it to us. The government is supposed to protect us from having them taken away. But in modern day society, we have a government who's trying to take them away. The exact opposite of what the Founding Fathers intended. And it all boils down to emotional, non-logical arguments. So then they turn around and they push regulation that does things like this. All right, just so you can see this. This is the Senate Bill 736 that was put up in the Senate back in 2021. The act may be cited as the assault weapons ban of 2021. This bill was not passed. In this bill, they have things like the term semi-automatic pistol means any repeating pistol that utilizes a portion of energy of a firing cartridge to extract the fired cartridge case and chamber the next round, and requires a separate pull of the trigger to fire each cartridge. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with firearms and aren't familiar with those terms, this is a cartridge. The whole thing is a cartridge. You have the casing and you have the bullet, but the whole thing is a cartridge. That's what they mean by a cartridge. The term semi-automatic shotgun means any repeating shotgun that utilizes a portion of the energy of a firing cartridge to extract the fired cartridge case and chamber the next round, and requires a separate pull of the trigger to fire each cartridge, and by adding at the end of the following. Okay. 36. The term semi-automatic or semi-automatic assault weapon. Here we go. Means any of the following, regardless of country of manufacturer or caliber of ammunition accepted. Semi-automatic rifle that has the capacity to utilize a magazine that is not a fixed magazine. Does have any one of the following: a pistol grip, a forward grip, a folding telescoping or detachable stock, or is otherwise foldable or adjustable in a manner that operates to reduce the length, size, or any other dimension, or otherwise enhances the concealability of the weapon. A grenade launcher, a barrel shroud, or a threaded barrel. A barrel shroud. All right, just so you guys can understand what a barrel shroud is, let me I didn't want to show you guys this stuff, but I'll show you this one. Barrel shroud is basically known as is what we call a handguard. Okay, that's this stuff right here. Right, it goes around the barrel. That's what it is. That's a barrel shroud. All right, now a semi-automatic rifle that has a fixed magazine with the capacity to accept more than 10 rounds, except for an attached tubular device designed to accept and capable of operating only with .22 caliber rimfire ammunition. All right, so that's what they describe as a semi-automatic assault rifle. The semi-automatic pistol is also included in this legislation. So it's not just assault rifle bans. Semi-automatic pistol that has the capacity to utilize a magazine that is not a fixed magazine, and does have any one of the following: a threaded barrel, a second pistol grip, barrel shroud, the capacity to accept detachable magazine at some location outside of the pistol grip, semi-automatic version of an automatic firearm, manufactured weight of 50 ounces or more when unloaded, stabilizing brace or similar component, semi-automatic pistol with a fixed magazine that has the capacity to accept more than 10 rounds. Okay. Now, a lot of that stuff was referring to pistols that can be converted into what's known as an SBR for an additional tax stamp of like $200, which I think has gone up since then. Which is it's more referring to your AR-15 style pistols, not an actual pistol. But on the same token, a detachable magazine is one of these. Let me get myself back up here. Sorry. Give me just a second. Figure out where I am again. All right. Now, a detachable magazine is one of these. It's one of these. All right. These are detachable magazines. They're not fixed. They don't stay in place. All right. Now, this bill is talking about outlawing or banning any detachable magazine that has a capacity of more than 10 rounds. This magazine holds 10 rounds and goes to this firearm. And you say, well, they weren't saying that kind of pistol was, they weren't talking about that kind of pistol, because they were, they were talking about the SBR type pistols and stuff. All right, okay, I'll give you that. But one of the things that they did say, all right, hang on a second, because I'm going to show you something here real quick. Because one of the things that they made a statement about in there, there we go, was that the barrel was threaded, right? Well, not sure you can see, if you can see in there. Let me pull this up more full screen for you guys. See if you can actually see this. Fade this in. All right, I want you guys to look inside that barrel. Right, you see those lines inside that barrel? That's a threaded barrel. So this firearm that I have right here, that would meet the qualifications for a legal firearm on all those things, except for the fact it has rifling, has threads inside the barrel. That would make this firearm illegal, even though it has a capacity of only 10 rounds. That's according to the Senate bill, by the way. Fortunately, that didn't get passed. Now, this firearm, which is a full-size pistol, versus this compact pistol that I've showed you here. All right, it's compact size. This full size. This particular pistol has a magazine capacity of 13 rounds. This would make this firearm illegal under that weapons ban. I didn't even get to the fact that it's threaded. Another style of threading that they might be talking about too is threading around the end of the barrel that allows for silencer to be applied to it. You can get that to happen even on these, all right? But nevertheless, you got threading all through this thing, all right? Rifling, everything, whatever. So one of my firearms would have been illegal under that law, and it's not an assault rifle. Yet the left was saying, "Oh, nobody's coming after your guns. Nobody's coming after your guns. You're just overreacting." Really? I just read you the legislation the Senate put up. Now, that one failed, but the Democrats didn't give up because they went into the House and they drafted another one, House Bill 1808. You can see it. There we go. House Resolution, House Bill 1808, 117th Congress, year 2022. The House passed it back in August. Hasn't made it past the Senate for some reason. Don't know why, but it hasn't. But this act may be cited as the assault weapons ban of 2022. The term semi-automatic pistol means any repeating pistol that utilizes a portion of energy firing the cartridge to extract the fired cartridge case and chamber the next round, and requires a separate pull of the trigger for each trigger to fire each cartridge. Term semi-automatic shotgun, same. A semi-automatic rifle means any of the following, regardless of the country of the manufacturer or caliber of ammunition accepted. Semi-automatic rifle that has the capacity to accept a detachable ammunition feeding device. Has one of the following: a pistol grip, a forward pistol grip, a folding, telescoping, detachable stock, or stock that is otherwise foldable or adjustable in a manner that operates to reduce the length, size, or any other dimension, or otherwise enhances the concealability of the weapon. A grenade launcher or barrel shroud, threaded barrel. Semi-automatic rifle that has a fixed ammunition feeding device with the capacity, blah blah blah, same part. Okay. Semi-automatic pistol, any part of the combination parts, component, device, attachment, or accessory that is designed for functions to accelerate the rate of fire of a semi-automatic firearm, but not convert the semi-automatic firearm into a machine gun. Alright, semi-automatic pistol that has an ammunition feeding device that is not fixed ammunition feeding device. I already showed you. It's not fixed. It's not detachable. It's detachable. Has any one of the following: a threaded barrel, bingo, a second pistol grip, a barrel shroud, the capacity to accept a detachable ammunition feeding device at the same location at some location outside of the pistol grip. A semi-automatic version of an automatic firearm. That's such a vague statement right there. A semi-automatic version of an automatic firearm. A manufactured weight of 50 ounces or more when unloaded. A buffer tube, stabilizing brace, or similar component that protrudes horizontally behind the pistol grip and is designed or redesigned to allow or facilitate a firearm to be fired from the shoulder. Semi-automatic pistol with fixed ammunition feeding device that has the capacity to accept more than 15 rounds. Not very many of those. nevertheless, here are all the different firearms that are on their list. And it goes on and gets into more detail. Now, I showed you on my two firearms, my two pistols, what the difference is between them. Under the Senate bill, one of them would have been illegal. Under the House bill, I get to keep both of them. But it also depends on how they're defining threats. So, let's get into the assault rifle bans. Right? So, if all they were really after were assault rifles, then why are shotguns on there and why are pistols on there? Well, let me show you some facts here. Right? Military.com, right? This is for the M249 saw. This thing weighs 18 pounds, has a length of 40.74 inches, barrel length of 18 inches, shoots caliber of 5.56, 45 millimeter. Action is gas operated and open bolt. Max rate of fire is 800 rounds per minute, with a muzzle velocity of 3,000 feet per second, with a max range of 3,600 meters. All right. Now that's just the technical specs. I'm going to break this down a little bit further for you here in a minute and let you have a comparison here. Now this is for the M4. All right. It entered service in 1994. The caliber is a 5.56. Weight is 2.5 kilograms. Length is 838 millimeters. Length stock collapsed to 757 millimeters. Barrel length is 370 millimeters. Muzzle velocity is 841 meters per second. Cyclical rate of fire, which means if you were to continuously fire it at its maximum capabilities, you'll be able to shoot 700 to 950 rounds per minute. However, that's not the practical rate of fire, which is essentially what a human being is capable of firing a thing at. All right. That practical rate of fire is only 400 to 100 rounds per minute, or 40 to 100 rounds per minute. Magazine capacity of 30 rounds. Sighting range is 600 meters. Range of effective fire is 360 meters. All right. Now, according to the Bushmaster Owner's Manual, right? Barrel rifling twist is a 1 in 9. Velocity. Here we go. Maximum effective rate of fire: 45 rounds per minute. Semi-automatic. Big difference there, isn't it? I'd say so. Where did that slide go? Oh, there it is. Dirt. Here we go. All right. Now, a little bit of comparison here for you. We'll go to this slide first. Okay. Now, here you see the M4 and the M249 combined, right? With the rate of fires that they're given, and I'm using the practical rate of fire, all right, for the M4, the max rate of fire on the M249, simply because with the M249 it is an automatic rifle, right? It is a machine gun. It is meant to do that sort of thing. Squeeze the trigger and it'll continue to fire until you let go of the trigger. All right. The M4 had semi-automatic or 3-round burst, so you can squeeze the trigger and it would fire 3 rounds automatically. It's automatic fire. All right. Later versions, I think they brought the automatic fire back to where you had 3 options: safety or safe, semi-automatic, and automatic. All right. Most of the time, soldiers never use the automatic because it's your accuracy goes way down. And usually the automatic fire is only used whenever you're trying to do covering fire. So it really wasn't used a whole lot, right? Nevertheless, if you break that down into a 5-second time frame, that means with the M4 you're capable of firing 12 rounds in 5 seconds. With the M249 you can fire 66 rounds in 5 seconds. It's a big rate of fire, right? Neither one of these weapons are sold to the American citizen. These are weapons that are given to the military and the military only. Now, compare that with what's sold to the civilians and civilian population. The M4, 12 rounds in 5 seconds. The M249 is 66 rounds in 5 seconds. Look at the AR-15. 3 rounds in 5 seconds. If you're a really fast shooter, like one of these, you know, world qualifier, world champion style, you know, shooters, then yeah, you can probably get, you know, 5 to 7 rounds, maybe 8 rounds off in 5 seconds. Because you're shooting a little faster than 1 round a second. But your average citizen, your average shooter, is maybe doing 3 rounds in 5 seconds. With my experience and my background with decades of being familiar with firearms and decades of shooting them, I can do 5 rounds in 5 seconds. If I get a little bit more practice, I can probably do better than that. Nevertheless, this is what you're looking at. Now, a definition of a firearm or an assault rifle is not what everyone makes it out to be. It's not. Oh, let me show you one more thing real quick before I move on to that. This is the new firearm that the U.S. military is getting. There's a couple things on here I want you to notice. All right. The 6-hour XM5. All right. It's known as the MCX Spear Rifle. Has a rate of fire of 800 rounds per minute. The actual practical rate of fire is probably about the same, if not a little bit higher than the M4. Fire modes: semi-automatic and full auto. Has a 6-position stock. And the 6.8 millimeter round that they're talking about using for this thing is capable of penetrating the highest level of protection at effective range. The highest level of protection meaning class 4 body armor. Now, this thing will penetrate class 4 body armor. Nothing on the civilian market even remotely comes close to that until you start getting up into the calibers above 308 and start getting into the 50 caliber range. Folks, I'm trying to get you guys to understand there's a lot of confusion, a lot of misinformation out there regarding these things. And here's the definition of an assault rifle. Actual definition of an assault rifle: a rapid fire magazine fed automatic rifle designed for infantry use. Those kind of weapons are not sold to the general public. They are not. Okay? They aren't. This is an assault rifle. An AR-15 is not. Now, just to get back to those regulations that I was talking about earlier in reference to the Senate bill and House 1808. All right, the M1 carbine. This bad boy right here, right? The one on the bottom would be illegal. because of the adjustable stock. The one on top would not be illegal. The only difference between those two rifles is appearance and a foldable stock. One would be illegal, the other would not. Is that common sense legislation? You know what else would be illegal? This one would be illegal. It too is an M1. But because of the way it looks and it has the adjusting stock, it would be illegal. Shotguns. The one on top, legal. The one down below, illegal. Biggest difference? Appearance. Foldable stock or collapsing stock. Both pump action. One's illegal, the other's not. Is that common sense legislation? All that because people seem to think that an AR-15 is an assault rifle. This is an assault rifle. This is designed. It is an automatic weapon designed for infantry use. They can fire 12 rounds a second, or 12 rounds for every 5 seconds. We can shoot 3 rounds per every 5 seconds. Those of us with a little bit of practice, those of us with some training, those of us with some experience can probably get that number up to 5 or 6. Well, 5 or 6 rounds in 5 seconds versus 12 rounds per second. It's not the same thing. The American citizen is not sold assault rifles. Now, if you know what you're doing and you're a weapons mechanic or a weaponsmith, sorry about that, didn't mean to offend anybody, but if you're a weaponsmith, you know how to take these weapons and turn them into the same thing that the infantry has. You can do that, but it takes a level of skill that is above the average firearms owner. Most firearms owners don't want to do that. Most military veterans are going to tell you, no. General civilian public probably shouldn't have an actual assault rifle. Leave that to the military to deal with. But the reality is, the Constitution says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. When that was written, private citizens had the same weapons that the military did. Because the private citizens made up the military. Now we have people that volunteer for military service. The military equipment is much better and greater than what anything the civilians have, because we have to fight enemies who have similar equipment. Now, what were to happen if those enemies were to make it on the U.S. soil? Because our military failed. We'd have no way of defending ourselves without the right to keep and bear arms. And here's a little laugh for you. This is the liberal's guide to the deadly AR-15. I want you to notice a few things about this. They sometimes call it a machine gun, i.e. also known as machine gun, an assault rifle, and a weapon of mass destruction. We all know weapons of mass destruction are far more powerful than an AR-15 could ever be. Weapon of mass destruction can wipe out thousands of people at one time with one shot. AR-15 to kill 1,000 people, you'd have to pull that trigger 1,000 times. is not a weapon of mass destruction. It's not an automatic rifle. It's not an assault rifle. It's not a machine gun. It's semi-automatic, right? The Picatinny rails on the side there. Air vents. Keeps the gun barrel from melting. No. Keeps your hand from getting burned from holding it. Laser sniper scope. Provides accuracy up to 10 miles and can see through walls. No, it can't. The technology for that does not exist. Unless you're doing like infrared type stuff, and even then, you can't see through walls. Collapsible stock. Enables gun to be concealed under a jacket. Nah. Takes more than just a collapsible stock to make that concealable. Full auto switch. Really? Is that really a full auto switch? Let's take a look. Let's take a look. Oh, nope. I only see two positions. Safe and semi. There is no automatic fire there. That automatically removes it from being an assault rifle. Morons. If you don't know what you're talking about, keep your mouth shut and stay out of the conversation. If you're going to enter into the conversation, educate yourself and know what you're talking about before you get into the conversation. Otherwise, you're going to make yourself look stupid and nobody's going to give two craps about what you have to say. Period. Alright? Hair trigger. Allows shooter to rapidly fire the gun with no effort. The latest trigger pull I've ever seen has been a 1 pound trigger, and that's only been in competition shooters who do that. Your average shooter, you're going to have a 3 pound trigger pull or more. That requires effort to squeeze that trigger to get that round to go off. It's not a doop to make that happen. It takes some effort, all right? Just to give you an idea, right? Here, right? See, nothing. Chamber's empty. Gun's cleared, or pistol's cleared. There's nothing in here, right? Dry fire this thing, right? Now, I want you to watch the pressure on my finger, right? Just on this right here alone, right? You see how the meat on my finger is getting depressed? I'm having to put some pressure on that. Right there. Right? That's what's known as a trigger break right there. Now I have to put additional pressure on it before it goes off. That requires effort. That's not just a to-do. It requires effort. And that has a 5 pound trigger pull. Come at me with this stupid stuff. Magazine can fire 1,000 rounds per minute. Baloney. Not even close. Not even close. A machine gun grip, really? Allows for pinpoint accuracy while shooting full auto? Well, you've already seen, it doesn't fire full auto. One. And even if it did, you wouldn't get pinpoint accuracy if it was firing on full auto, even with another hand grip up there. At best, that just helps you get things back on target faster. Doesn't make it more accurate. For some people, it makes them more inaccurate. Know what you're talking about before you open your mouth. Because everything I hear coming from the left are a bunch of people who don't understand, don't know anything about firearms, and want to run their mouth and talk about how horrible firearm owners are and how we're the ghastly, just horrific reasons why all this crime exists. There's 110 10 million legal firearms owners in the United States of America. And we own probably 300 million firearms. We were going to be a problem. The summer of love would look like a party. Well, that's the thing about legal firearm owners. We respect the firearms. We respect what they're capable of doing. And we're safety conscious and law conscious when it comes to that. Your criminals are not. People who are going to steal the firearm from a relative are not. Those are the people you have to be worried about. Stop trying to infringe on a creator endowed right that we have a constitution to protect. Now, there's one final thing that I want to show you. I'm not going to show you all of it, but for those of you interested in getting firearms, I want to make you aware of this, all right? There are plenty of locations, plenty of sites, plenty of people online who actually provide training. However, don't depend on online training for your training, all right? It is a good reference. It's a good place to start. It's a good place to learn things, but nothing substitutes in-person training with someone who is skilled and qualified to teach. All right, so do yourself a favor. If you get one, go get the training. The more trained you are, the more proficient you're going to be, and the more likely you are to survive a firefight. Now, with that said, I'm going to give you a few references and a few things that you can look up to get you started on stuff. All right, here's one that has Colion Noir with the USCCA. To give you an example of how complicated and frustrating the laws in this country can be, they put together a scenario, right, to demonstrate when you could properly and legally defend yourself. All right, now this just goes to show how important it is for you to get trained and for you to understand the laws of your state and the laws of your county and your local laws in reference to firearm ownership. All right, because a lot of these liberals and a lot of the leftists don't realize how strict these firearm laws are already, and if we enforce them as they exist already now, it would eliminate a lot of this mess. I already demonstrated to you earlier how it would have stopped several mass shootings. All right, but just take a moment to watch this real quick.
Where were you?
Told you. We're just out having a few drinks.
No, you weren't. Where were you?
Well,
It's the guys.
I checked the location on your phone. Where were you?
I'm not those kind of guy.
okay.
Yeah.
I told you. We're just out having a few drinks.
Oh, my sister texted me.
More like a strip.
She what?
She texted me.
Yeah. I don't know.
You were with her last night.
I don't know what to tell you, babe.
You slept with my sister. I could kill you.
I just got it.
Babe. Babe!
Yeah, I'm just gonna mind my business.
Hi.
Yeah,
How are you
order
doing?
for a pickup.
Sure. What's the name?
Cool. And everything in the register, please.
What?
Yeah, everything in the fucking register.
Weather was good.
I mean, are you stupid? Can you not hear me? I'm standing right in front of your face. Everything in the goddamn register. Open it up, you fucking worker. You shut up over there. Everything in here right now to me.
Don't do it!
Sit down.
Don't do it!
Sit down, you son of a bitch. Just hold on.
Don't do it.
Wait, hey, hold on. Shut up.
Don't do it!
You, man.
Don't do it!
You. Now, bitch.
Now, before too much is given away, as you can see in this video, goes into doing a breakdown here. But I'm not going to give that away. All right? That's one of those things that you guys can go and look up yourself and take a look at. Real quick, though, I do want to give you a list of some good resources that will help you guys out. Let me get this situated real quick. All right. Here we go. Now, I'm going to fade this back in here real quick. This section right here. Those are all some good resources for training, tactical information, understanding on things that you're going to have to be aware of when it comes to being a firearms owner and using your firearms for safety and for self-protection and exercising your constitutional right to bear arms. So go ahead and take a moment to pause the video to write those down. A couple of ones that I do want to point out to you, though, that I think you'll find particularly interesting. It's the History Channel. I don't necessarily agree with everything they say in there. Corleone is actually an attorney, so he has a good understanding of the law side of things, and he monitors what's going on in Congress regarding the Second Amendment. So he's a good resource there. Mr. Guns and Gear is also another one who pays close attention to what's going on in DC, and has a lot of good reviews and technical information to understand rifles and what they're capable of, in various things of that nature. But he's also a really good source to stay on top of what's going on in DC with. And then Mike Glover. Mike Glover is a former Special Forces operator, former Tier 1 operator. The man is a wealth of knowledge when it comes to tactics and preparedness and survival and things of that nature. He does a lot of training with law enforcement. He's done a lot of training with various communities and whatnot. I would take some time to check him out, Mike Glover. Also Fieldcraft Survival. Look into his stuff. He's a great resource. I trust what he has to say. The man knows his stuff. Who's gonna know it better than a Tier 1 operator, man? I'm telling you. And then Tactical Rifleman, Tactical Hive, Ronin Tactical are also other good resources that you can get with that. As far as firearms information, training, knowledge, understanding, keeping up with what's going on legally with everything. But I hope I was able to clarify some things for you. But this particular topic is so garbled up, and there's so many things there, so much misinformation and political stuff and emotional things that get wrapped around this topic. Pardon me. That the waters are muddied, and they're muddied bad. But the reality is, we have a God-given right to keep and bear arms, to protect ourselves, to protect our loved ones, to protect life and property. And because some people aren't doing their jobs, because some people have mental illness, because a small segment of society can't behave, the rest of society wants to take that right away. And one of the first things the tyrannical, communist, Marxist, theocracies, oligarchies do when they get into power is disarm the people. It's one of the first things they do. As soon as they get them disarmed, they take away the right to speak. And they lose the ability to have a grievance against their government. This is what our government is trying to do right now. This is what the left is trying to do right now. I don't completely 100% agree with what the right is saying, but nevertheless, I spent 2 decades of my life defending the Constitution. I'm going to defend it now today too. So I hope that clarified some things for you. I hope that opened your eyes, enlightened you just to the reality of what's going on in this world. And I hope you've been motivated and inspired to protect the Second Amendment. So with that said, you guys have a great day. Enjoy your weekend. And happy Thanksgiving while you're at it.